Great. Yeah, welcome everybody. My name's Ariel and I'm going to be hosting this conversation today on service design in youth work. We're going to be launching a toolkit and also e-learning course for youth workers and youth organizations. So today's topic is service design in youth work, and we are joined by two speakers. So Imre Simon from Erica, and Imre is going to be talking to us. He was project managing the project, so he's going to be talking to us about these resources that we've been developing, and Promo Cymru was a partner as well. And we're also very lucky today to be joined by our keynote speaker, Rebecca Ray Evans from Reply. So she's a leading service designer and researcher, and she's really here to talk to us about service design. So if any of you are quite new to this methodology, Bex is going to sort of fill us in. But before we actually go into the event itself, it'd be really great if some of us could meet each other. We actually used to do these events in person. I think we're all really missing in-person events. So what we tried at our last Creating Conversations is we did a little bit of speed Zooming. So we're going to try that again. So what will happen in a second, you will get an alert up to join a breakout room. So today's topic is service design in youth work. And we're going to be launching a toolkit and e-learning course on the topic of service design. And this toolkit has been developed by a partnership across Europe of youth professionals over the last couple of years. And today we're going to be sharing that with you. And here to talk to us about the toolkit is Imre Simon from Erica, the European Youth Information and Counselling Agency. He was the project manager on the project. And also our keynote speaker today is Rebecca Ray Evans. She's a leading service designer and researcher, and she's here to talk to us about service design and to share some examples with us about how she's used it in a youth work context. So don't worry if this concept is quite new to you. That's the whole idea of sort of Creating Conversations. It's about us being able to talk and share ideas and expertise and really improve the way that we use digital within our organizations. So we've already done the introductions, a bit of speed zooming. I'm about to play you an animation. So we actually created an animation for the project, which should just tell you a little bit more about it and get you up to speed. And then we're going to hand over to Imre, then Rebecca. If you want to keep your questions until the Q&A, that should be about 11 o'clock. And then you'll have an opportunity to ask Imre or Rebecca any questions that you have. And then if we've got time, which I'm hoping we will, we'll have time to actually do a little bit more networking as well at the end. Yeah, so this is just the sort of real purpose of today's event is to launch this toolkit, an e-learning course that we've been working on over the past couple of years. And the project is called Design, but I won't tell you that much more about it because I'm about to play you an animation which should give you some more info. As technology advances, young people are accessing information and using services differently. That means that youth work too has to adapt quickly to make sure it continues to meet young people's changing needs. Service design is a process that can help you rethink and innovate the services you offer. It's an approach that helps us to think creatively, get to the root of the problem, test out our ideas, and find solutions that work. The Design Training Course and Toolkit aims to bring this expertise into youth information work. The process we're using has 4 stages: discover, define, develop, and do it. At the first phase of the process, you'll conduct a piece of research with the aim to fully understand the needs, behaviours and experiences of the young people you're designing for. During the define phase, you'll spend time analysing and looking closely at the information and insights you've gathered. You'll define the most important points to focus on and set the direction of your design challenge. In the develop phase, you'll come up with ideas and build small prototypes to test them. The last phase is called Do It, because this is where you'll finally evolve your ideas, build and implement the solutions. The design training course and toolkit will help you to develop your understanding of service design and how you can apply this to youth work. Great. I will hand over now to Imre.
Thank you, Ariel, and good morning to everyone. Thank you for attending this conversation of today. And I will be very happy to give you an introduction to the design project, which was about service design, just like the whole conversation this morning. I will share my screen with you, and in the meantime, I introduce myself, although Ariel briefly introduced me already. So my name is Imre Simon. I work for the European Youth Information and Counseling Agency, or for ERICA in short, as a development manager, and I was managing this design project, which was short for Innovative Youth Information Service Design and Outreach. Very briefly, before I get into the project, I tell you a couple of words about the organization ERICA. I'm sure that many of you know us, but probably not everybody. I saved you one extra slide, so you can just concentrate on the middle. We have the ERICA logo in the project's name and logo as well. To cut it very short, we are basically a European network of youth information service providers and youth information centers. And our aim is to constantly develop and innovate in the service provision of youth information. So we work for national coordinating bodies or with our members, our national coordinations of youth information providers usually, and we have many professional development projects just like the design one. So in our logo, the Y stands for the word youth, and our motto is as well all about youth. And we like to integrate indeed the youth perspective in all our projects, and it is shown visually in the design project logo as well. The full name of the project was Innovative Youth Information Design and Outreach. And we started this project, well, on one hand, as always, because we felt that there is a need in our network to develop this further, and on the other hand, because we believe in the quality youth information and counseling support services, and that they can only be achieved if we constantly innovate, if we are up to date with research and results, and with the active involvement of young people. So this is how we created this project as well, and delivered it with the support of the Erasmus Plus program of the European Union. You can read the objectives of the project. So of course, the bottom line is that we wanted to introduce service design methodology and service design thinking in the development of youth information services, tools, resources, to make sure that they meet the needs and information seeking behavior of young people, and they are streamlined services and tools that ensures that their outreach would be as high as possible. Needless to say, youth information services need to be just like any other service, user-friendly, needs-based, competitive, and relevant to the target group as well, that they will decide to use those. I'm happy to speak today about the outcomes of this project because it is ending very soon. So we are in the last phase of this project, which was planned to last for 2 years. It was prolonged. You can guess the reason. Yes, indeed, the pandemic it was. So in the end, it took like 2 years and a half probably to come up with all these outcomes, and now we are happy to disseminate them across Europe. And today it's Promo Cymru's turn to do the dissemination in Wales. So what can we disseminate? What did we come up with during these more than 2 years? We tried to combine policy research and practice, and as a joint merged result, or a result including these aspects. We have a focus group report. I will tell you more about each of these in a minute. A toolkit on service design, an online course on the same subject, and we had pilots and pilot projects in the frame of the e-learning course, and each partner has prepared service design strategies. You can find a bit more if you are interested on our page erica.org, and the direct link is /tools resources. So far what you can find is the focus group report, and the toolkit is coming up very soon as well. The e-learning course is of course of a different nature that is not shared on the website. Yeah, and the strategies are also, they belong to the partners. Probably you will hear more about the Welsh strategy either today or sometime soon. So let's go through briefly these outputs one by one. So first, we prepared this focus group interview report, but of course, like we ran focus groups before that to compile this booklet. There were 8 focus groups carried out in 4 different countries, totally with 37 young people aged between 15 and 29 participated. And the subject was the information-seeking behavior of young people, and we compiled all the results that we found out about this from these focus groups in this study. This can be a very good starting point, and this was also our starting point to see what needs and what preferences we have to meet, but also for what aim we have to use our service design methods in developing our services. Then the second output is the design toolkit, which is explaining you the steps that you have seen in the video a minute ago. Of course, in a very hands-on approach, and a bit more broadly than the video itself. And this is which will be made public, and probably Promo already has it available online. So that is a result of the project that we invite you to use. It is like a first step guide on how to use service design in designing your services, basically. The third output is an e-learning course. This is a screenshot from our e-learning platform, which basically go through the content of the toolkit in a practical way that the participants are directly using it, putting the new knowledge into practice, and as I mentioned, also developing a pilot service design project for their organization. So when they finish the course, they might decide that they implement that pilot project, or in any case, that is a very good learning by doing approach to using service design in their workplace. And we have service design strategies of each of the partners. yeah, I will not go into details about this. Probably you will hear or heard already about the strategy designed by Promo Cymru, which is counting on the involvement of the Welsh government very much in implementing this strategy and mainstreaming service design. I think the Welsh one is a pretty strong strategy. So hopefully it will get implemented as well, because that would be really a boost, I believe, for the outreach of the youth information services in Wales as well. Yeah, and who did it? Who done it? You see the project partners logos on the screen. There were 8 project partners plus an external partner, Åbo Academy from Finland. So they were the higher education, formal education partner, and the others were mostly youth information organizations. Partners had a very varied expertise and knowledge. There we had experts in digital communication and marketing. We had experts in face-to-face youth information outreach. We had the European level organization, which was ERICA. We had the researchers at Åbo Academy, who had the expertise in information studies, and they had an understanding of youth information trends based on research. And an academic approach, and we had experts in youth information and counseling services, because in the end, that's what most of us were. And we had the support of the Erasmus Plus program of the European Union, who covered or who co-funded the project, so that and provided the framework for this project. So that was all. These are all my these were all my slides and my brief input or presentation of this project. Of course, the topic of service design is much broader than this, but indeed this was, as far as I know, having even a European perspective, it's quite a first, and Promo was pretty cutting edge with introducing this this subject in youth information, because we have not really seen it. Probably Finland also, and for the rest, it was really the interest and recognizing that this is something that is coming up and should be used proactively. And I think we were pretty. I wouldn't say cutting edge, but like in the youth sector, the non-profit sector, I think we are quite fast with implementing this. So I hope that you find the outcomes useful. They are, of course, publicly available as results of European projects, and I do hope that you will have the chance to use and implement them as well. So good luck with that, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Imre. And if you've got any questions for Imre, we will have a Q&A in a bit, but that was a really great introduction to the project. I sort of do want to touch on a few points that you made there, Imre, about how important service design is for youth work. It is cutting edge, it is new. It's something that's actually been used throughout the world to design so many of the products and services that we use today, particularly digital products. But this approach is so effective that it's rapidly being adopted now by not-for-profits, by governments, to actually, for us all as a new skill, a new understanding, to learn that actually as we progress, this is one of the skills that we need to be able to develop services that are actually relevant for people going forward. So it's a really valuable skill. And this project, as Imre said, was all about bringing this expertise into youth work, because it's another tool for our toolkit to help us to be able to really engage with young people in a meaningful and effective way, using new technologies and also matching their new behaviors, because young people, as we all do, now behave and access the world in completely different ways. And our services have to continually rethink and reinvent ourselves to be able to stay relevant. But to talk to us more about service design, we are very lucky to be joined today by Rebecca Ray Evans. As I said, she has an extensive experience in research and user-centered design. I'm sure she will introduce herself as well, but a little bit that that I know about Bex is that she used to work for sort of big blue chip clients and delivering these digital projects, but now has transitioned, set up, co-founded her own organization called Reply, and actually specifically now works with Tech for Good projects. So it's bringing that expertise again into the world of sort of charities and not-for-profits. But I will hand over to Bex now.
Thanks, Ariel. What a lovely introduction, and great to see you all and be invited to talk to you today. So I will share my screen and hopefully it all works as it should. And I make sure that I can see everybody as well. Good to get reaction, isn't it? And see if what I'm saying is working out, making sense to everybody, or I'm just talking rubbish. So a little bit more about my background. Yeah, I run a service design agency called Reply. It's been around for about 2 years. It's a social enterprise itself. We might even convert into a kick or something at some point, because we're not here to make profit. We're here to just spread knowledge of using tech for social good in some way or another. But I have actually been working with charities for about 9 or 10 years exclusively. So I've worked in agency settings, meaning I've worked with hundreds of charities to redesign their services in some way or another, which has been really helpful to get that kind of broad spread and the nuances from lots of different organizations and the challenges and successes that they've had over that time. I also run my own volunteer organization called Tech for Good Live, which is we run podcasts and events locally to where I am in Greater Manchester to support charities, but also cross-sector to build tech for social good. I know a lot of entrepreneurs want to move into doing tech for social good, but I believe that entrepreneurs can really be benefited by the charity sector's knowledge of the issues at hand, instead of them running in and building a random blockchain solution to a problem that didn't need a blockchain. So I think we can all work together, all sectors can work together to bring stuff to the table when we're building tech for good solutions, but I do focus on the charity sector myself. Some other things that I just wanted to point out about me: the guitars aren't mine. Everyone always asks. I'm not that cool. I cannot play an instrument. Also, I like electronic music, so it's a little bit off brand for me. They're my husband's. Everyone always asks, gotta point it out. I'm not that cool, I'm afraid. Also, I have 5 cats. Don't ask, it's too many cats. I'm not a crazy cat lady. I'm going to blame my husband again for the cats, although that might be untrue. And one of them's here. I only mention it because they kind of interrupt a lot. So you might see a cat. Other than that, I'll just get on with it. And I'm going to start with a little fictional story to help describe my take on service design. Alex is an excited entrepreneur, wants to open a restaurant. It's sorry for the meat picture as well. I'm a vegetarian, don't know why this is so meat orientated. So apologies if it upsets anybody. It's upsetting me. But Alex wanted to open a steak and chips restaurant. It's a brilliantly simple idea, and they think it's going to do well. And they implemented what we call user-centered design. So they thought about the people that are going to eat the steak and chips. Alex has done their research, and people do indeed like steak and chips. They like the simplicity. They like the kind of gimmick to it as well. It's a winner. It's a good idea. Let's go ahead and create the restaurant. Alex also knows that this is not the field of dreams. Alex can't just build this restaurant and people will show up. They spend money on marketing, which is like advertising, great signage. They've paid for ambassadors to spread the word of mouth. Great, now it's time for the grand opening. The big day happens, people show up, they eat the food. Alex wanders around to see how it's going. Everyone's really nice about the restaurant. The food is lovely. What a great success. However, people aren't coming back. The problem is that Alex is rarely seeing the same faces. Regular customers were the key to the success of this restaurant. Alex did loads of great spreadsheets to understand how they were going to make money from this restaurant, and a lot of it is repeat business. There's a problem. Steak and Chips is now hemorrhaging money because they're not seeing people coming back. But Alex knows that you've got to spend money to make money. You know, the best marketing campaigns happen in recessions when people are struggling. You should spend money in those times. So Alex splashes the cash creates a new, very expensive and well-referenced, gets a maitre d' hired, new posters are splashed around the town, there's a discount for your second visit via an expensive loyalty app that Alex has gone and commissioned. They've put fresh flowers on every table, but it still doesn't work. So what's happened here? The problem is that Alex has forgotten what we call in service design the backstage. Alex is solely focused on the front stage, which is the bit that the users see. I'll explain all this in a minute. But Alex is kind of wandering around the kitchen one day, complaining to the kitchen staff about the lack of repeat customers. And Alex has noticed that it's taking a while for the meals to get out of the kitchen. The kitchen staff are struggling to get the chips. There's actually limited amounts of people that the restaurant can cater for at any one time. And he notices a poor kitchen porter that was manually slicing hundreds and thousands of potatoes a day. They can't get the food out quick enough. They can't serve enough people. And they should have invested in an industrial potato cutter. Didn't notice this, it's too late. So this is what I'm talking about when I talk about front stage and backstage. And all of these things are just as important to create a cohesive service. So there's the customer journey right at the front. So that's the bit where the customers come into the restaurant, sit down at the table to get served. And that's the bit that a lot of people focus on. You've got the front stage as well. So that's where your staff are interacting with the customers. So this is like an interaction layer between customers and staff. Backstage is purely what the staff see. So this will be a CRM that doesn't work, that everybody hates. We need to think about that. And then the support processes, which is stuff, again, at the backstage that the customer doesn't see, but outside of your organization. So it might be that you have external suppliers that support what you do. And it's really important to think of all of these things in service design. Alex did something else wrong. Alex made assumptions about the user and what the user wanted. Alex assumed that they were unhappy with the service, so got a fancy maitre d'. Alex assumed that people had forgotten about the restaurant, so spent more on advertising. Assumed that people would use an app at all and wanted a discount for steak and chips. Alex assumed that people wanted a nicer environment, so invested in fresh flowers. But actually, they didn't want any of that. They just wanted quicker chips. Alex also jumped to a tech solution far too quickly. Unfortunately, this happens a lot. He said, we need an app. But actually, they didn't need an app. So that's the end of the story. Poor Alex and Steak and Chips failed because didn't implement service design processes that we kind of know about and use every day. Design, everyone says, what even is service design? And actually, as somebody who's worked in design for 15 years, we used to call it UX design. And there's loads of arguments about this within the design industry that you don't need to know about. I will bring up a few terminology. You know, I don't like overwhelming people with design terminology, because the design world is full of terminology that you just don't need to know. And it changes every 5 minutes for no good reason. It confuses people in the industry, never mind people outside of the industry. But we'll drop a few terms in this just because it's helpful if you do talk to other service designers at any point, or if they're talking to you and you have no idea what they're talking about. So design is the deliberate creation of something, apparently, and a service is something that helps someone do something. So if your organization has a service, someone's designed it, your service designers. But there's bad design and good design, and there's also somewhere in the middle. So some people who design stuff are really bad at designing stuff. Even designers are bad at designing stuff sometimes. You know, think about something that you've used lately that annoyed you. Like I can think of like 5 or 10 things off the top of my head, and a service I've interacted with, somewhere I've been, a restaurant I went to, a website I used that annoyed me. And that's just somebody who's really bad at design. That's all that is. So a good place to start when we're thinking about service design is, what is the problem you're trying to solve? We need to find the right problem before we solve it correctly. They're the kind of two parts that I always think about. And there's multiple different types of problem that we might want to look at different levels. So one problem that we might want to try and explore is, what's the wider problem within the user's life more generally? And we do a lot of maps. We love maps in service design. This is, you don't need to read it. It's just so you see what it looks like. This was a project I worked on recently, looking at young people exploring their sexuality for a client that provided information around that. And we didn't look at the service. didn't look at the service. We just looked at what the user, well, we did a little bit in this later on. So, you know, these things can be flexible depending on what you want to find out. But we use this to just try and understand what the user was going through generally while we're interacting them. You know, we interject with the service, right, to support them. So it's good to kind of see that bigger picture. This is just another example, so you can see what one looks like when it's more pretty. This one was deliberately designed up to explain this particular issue to people like funders. This is only half of it. I couldn't fit the other one on, but it's just to give you a vibe of what these sorts of maps look like. And, you know, we're exploring here practical things that they're doing. So the users often search online for help in this particular scenario, but also what they're feeling at any point in time. They're feeling ashamed. There's a lot going on here. They're feeling confused. Those things, you know, we created this off the back of a bunch of user interviews. So, and we kind of distilled it into one more typical journey, which, you know, doesn't speak for everybody's journey. Everybody's journey is very different, but this really helped us try and more generally understand the journeys that people go through. And the things at the top, we often find that there are kind of set things that most people will go through. They might not go through all of them. So in this one, we've got an aware, connection. You know, these things come out when you map this sort of thing, and starts to give you an understanding of what's going on in the user's life and what's important to them. We tend to call stuff like this as is mapping. That just means what it's like now. What does it look like now for the users? And we also do another one called to be. So this is the design. This is where we start to think, well, actually, what would be better than this? And I also think looking at this wider context is so important in service design. And this is a really good way of thinking about it. So, you know, people talk about products and services, and sometimes people get confused about which is which, but here's it in context. So you might have a product. The product might be, you know, a digital benefits calculator that you might have developed with an agency. It's maybe an app, it's maybe a web app, it's maybe just on your website somewhere, but you think a benefits calculator will help this particular user. But surrounding that is your service. So that's maybe your financial planning service that you've got. You might have multiple products within this financial planning service. And actually the wider experience that the user has with this problem more generally is, you know, someone leaving care. That's what's on their mind. The benefits calculator is just a means to an end. They've got a lot more going on. And actually it's really complicated for the user. So how can we make it easier for them? That's all we're trying to do. We're trying to make this particular problem that user is going through easier for them. They've got loads of other stuff going on. They're thinking about so much. They're, you know, interacting with the benefits system. They might be getting mental health support. They might be trying to find a job. They might be trying to volunteer so they can get more experience to seek a job. They're doing so many other things other than interacting with your service. And it's really good to remember that as we develop our service as well. So just to kind of, this is a real example of an organisation I worked with. So this was a charity. They support young people in care, and they were working with them when they were kind of leaving that care environment. And these young people needed to understand how to live unsupported. So the problem here, you know, tends to be big things outside of our control. We could campaign. A lot of campaigning sits within this, but ultimately, like as a service goes, we can't really do anything here. We can't change this. So in this scenario, that may be that the young people need better support when they leave care. Again, we can maybe campaign for better benefits, but there's not much we can practically do in this space. In this one, so this is what we can control based on our skills and experience. Where are we best placed to help this young person? So as the young person, they want to understand what they're entitled to when they leave care. We can't change what that is, but we can tell them, help them, support them in what that is. So that's your financial service. And then we think about the product. So what are their needs from the product? So if we think about the benefits calculator, they want to have a personalized budget so they can understand what income they're going to need when they leave care. So that's kind of like an example. And I think, you know, sometimes you might be developing a product on top of a service that already exists. Sometimes you might be developing a digital product to complement a face-to-face service that already exists. But if your service is pants, so will your product be. So it's a really good time if you are developing a product to rethink your service as well and see if that fits. Another problem you might want to solve, which is a little bit more granular. So actually you might have solved all of that. You might know that your financial planning service is wonderful and it's the right thing to support the user, but there's something niggling within the product. There's something, you know, the service, the product is not quite working for users. So what is that? And this is what we do then. So this is another map because we love maps, right? So then this is a blueprint, we call it, but it's essentially you map the service as it is right now. So going back to as is, what does your service look like? What does it look like for the customer? What are the actions the customer needs to take? What are the front of stage interactions, that the interaction between the staff member and the user? What are the back of stage actions that the user never sees? And what are the support processes? What tools, what platforms, what channels are you using to deliver this? This is, you don't need to read this. It doesn't matter that it's really small, just to show you what it looks like. But actually, I don't know if anybody gets a vibe that this is probably really complicated for the user. I mean, I didn't need to look much further than this, other than to say, I know what the problem is. It's way too complicated. We need to streamline this for the user. Literally all this was like a Zoom session. This was registration to a Zoom session. Why is it so complicated? We need to streamline it. And actually, I'm just going to show you another one on my own, because again, this is another example of, it's another charity I worked with where you don't really need to do a lot of work to see where the problem is. So we were doing this blueprint for, and this was an online course. It was a series of, you subscribe to the course and it was a series of videos, essentially, like simple. But why have they made it so complicated? So look at all the channels that they deliver the course through. They had a website, Typeform, an email. They delivered the course through WhatsApp and Telegram. They had a chat bot you could interact with. All of this was within the course. They had Google Sheets as the CRM. And this was literally just to sign up. This was just a sign up journey, just to say you have a place on the course. This is not okay for the users. The users are going to be incredibly complicated. I mean, the course even gets more complicated, but yeah, there's a lot going on there for the user to think about. Another thing we need to think about in service design is, what do your users really want? What do they want? And you know what? People are really bad at thinking about what the users really want. It's okay. Everybody's really bad at this. I think it's just natural. You know, you spend all day, every day thinking internally, thinking about your organization, thinking about your delivery, and it makes it very difficult to flip and think about the user's needs. There's this really funny Twitter account that everybody in design absolutely loves. We do things called user stories in design. You might have come across them before, but this is how they are laid out. As a user, I want to click here so that I go there. And I've seen so many bad user stories that aren't from the user's perspective at all. And these sorts of things make me laugh. I really like this Twitter account. There's another really bad example. As a user, I want to invite my friends to sign up for the app so I can help grow the user base. A user never thinks that way. A user does not think I want to help grow the user base. You want the user base to grow, but that's a very internal need. It's not a user need. As a website visitor, I love this one because you'll all have FAQs on your website, right? As a website visitor, I want to visit the FAQ page so that I can read answers to a bunch of stupid questions that nobody has ever asked, littered with SEO keywords that Barry from marketing insists will help drive organic traffic. Not a user need, not a user need. As a website visitor, I want to learn more so that I know more. Not getting a lot of insight from that, really. Not good user needs. And you know, Alex, we need an app. Bad user need. And I've literally, I think I might have this as an example, actually. There we go. This was actually a user needs statement that a charity wrote for me once. As a refugee, I need an app so that I can find services. What? Do they need an app? I think somebody in the chat has already said that people don't use apps. You don't need an app. I mean, you might do. Sometimes people need apps, but on the whole, nobody uses apps. Nobody wants to download an app. There's a lot of barrier to, anyway, I won't go onto the app rant. If you want to talk about apps, please do tweet at me. I will tell you all about why apps are not necessary on the whole. And this was something, again, I was working with a youth organization, and we were trying to think about user needs and what we need to do, you know, in a session. What are the steps of the session? And they said, we need to tell them the rules of joining Zoom sessions is one of the requirements of this you know, service. Before they join the Zoom session, we need to tell them the rules of it. In these Zoom sessions particularly, they were sharing a lot of confidential data. So one of their worries was that they had people, you know, putting Zoom on loudspeaker in an office when you know, that's not acceptable. So, you know, the worries were real here, and they really did need to tell people the rules of joining the Zoom sessions. But I just thought this is a very internally focused, you know, statement. Actually, if you just, and it feels passive aggressive as well a little bit, doesn't it? You know, it clearly suggests to you that they aren't they aren't following the rules, and that is annoying us, which is okay. It probably was, and that's fair. But actually, if you just shift that tone to a user need, they need to understand the rules actually when they're joining the Zoom sessions. It might make them feel more comfortable as a user joining. You know, all of a sudden you change it to a user statement and it becomes much more supportive instead of annoyed. and I think that will help you create a better service when your understanding of the user a little bit more. And again, some people are like, you know, this was the same session with the same youth organization. And I was like, well, why are they really coming to your sessions? And I'm like, well, we just tell them to come. They have to come. We have a syllabus to deliver. We can't ask them what they want. It's nothing to do with the user, really. We just tell them to come and they have to show up. But there will be a reason why the user is coming. And to find that out will mean you'll design a better service that meets their real needs. And, you know, a lot of the work we do, I think, in the youth industry is behavior change. We're trying to make people do something they don't want to naturally do. And behavior changes are all a part of this. I'm really big into it. And I love a behavior change framework. COM-B is my favorite. If anybody loves a COM-B, give me a woot woot. No, sometimes I get some fans. But thinking about behavior change doesn't stop it from being user-centered. Even if you are trying to make them do something they don't want to do, you know, there will be an underlying, you know, desire, motivation somewhere down there that you can build a service around for them. So think about what their real motivations are. And I always like to think, you know, act like an inquisitive child, constantly ask why. Is just a really, really helpful tool, I think, in service design. They need an app. Why? Why do they need an app? And I also think like acting like a grumpy teenager helps as well. Says who? Says who? Who said I should do that? Again, they need an app. Well, says who? Who said that they need an app? Why do they need an app? And you might have an answer for that, and that's great. That's amazing if you do. I'm going to end with a final example. I've talked about this particular example a few times during this presentation, but it was a youth homelessness organisation, and they were looking at the independent living advice service. So this was young people who were at risk of homelessness. So they were thinking of moving out of their home due to terrible circumstances, whatever they were. They felt like they needed to move out. They were at risk of not understanding what that really meant, not being able to afford that, and becoming homeless. So it's trying to intervene in those situations before, you know, it got critical. And the user needs statement we had for that was, as a young person, when I'm considering moving away from home, I need access to information and support so I can understand and read that in my own time, so I can make the best possible decision. And this was kind of roughly the user journey. There was a referral into the service, and they had this amazing youth worker called Linda. And Linda was kind of the only person that like managed this service or interacted with the young people at all. So she would get in touch with the young people, arrange an appointment. Linda had a session with the young person, and the young person gets left with a PDF for information if they wanted to go and find out more. This is kind of what the PDF looks like, and I have it open. I think it's just I mean, it's just a bit much, all great information, but I don't know, not really inspiring me to make change in my life. So we looked at very roughly at the barriers to this. So during the referral, we know that time matters at this point. They've been passed around, they're at risk of homelessness. Time is really important. Linda at this point picks up the referral. She struggles to meet every young person, especially in a good time frame. And obviously the pandemic has changed things. They have kind of just gone, just put it on Teams, just put it on Teams, like we all did, right? We all did that. I've done it with the events that I run, just put it on Teams without really thinking, what are we trying to achieve? You know, young people don't want to engage online. They're all really fed up of getting on a Zoom and a team. And it was fine that we did that in the first iteration, but now we're kind of, I mean, I was going to say lockdown's easing, but who knows? Now we're kind of, you know, rethinking all these services that we created very quickly. And I think what we did was excellent, but maybe some of it was trash, and we need to have a little bit of a rethink. Like, what's going to be a better, now we have a little bit more headspace, what might be a better way of engaging with these young people? You know, I've seen people do some really cool things, you know, with Minecraft groups. You know, we want to create engagement. A Zoom session, a Teams thing might not be the right answer for that, but what is the right answer? We don't know yet, but let's have a think about it. So the pandemic has changed things, and you know, this was just popped on Zoom, and the PDF was then sent afterwards. But the PDF was a tough read. You know, it's not personalized. It still has, people still have a lot of questions for Linda, and Linda can't answer them all. But what are the enablers? Well, actually, a lot is good about this service already. People trust Linda, and the individual advice is really, really helpful. That session that Linda has for them is invaluable. Afterwards, the young person does want to think about options on their own. They're not going to come to an answer in that session with Linda. It's a big, big choice for them. It's helpful for them to have space to explore things afterwards. So that leads us to a bunch of requirements of this service. So we need easier to read information. It needs to be easier to explore for themselves. So there's sections that matter to them. It needs to be personalized if it can be. We need to bring in Linda. We know that people trust and know Linda. We need to support that connection with Linda. We need to give information as well before speaking to Linda instead of just afterwards, so that the young person can capitalize on the time that they do have with Linda. So they've thought about it before and after meeting Linda. It was kind of important for this service. So we've done prototype. This is just a prototype. It's a very minimum like design that we've created very quickly just to test it with users. So we're going to send it to a batch of users. We've not done it yet. See how it works. But we created this in like half a day. It was very quick, and it's much better already. It's not perfect, but we've written it from a user's perspective. People can explore themselves. It might be that they found somewhere to live, so they don't need this section. It might be actually that they're looking for money and work, so they, it's not personalized per se, but they can kind of explore on their own terms a lot easier than a PDF might have done. It's just a little bit better. Not perfect, still a prototype, but we wanted to see if this was something that people would use. What might people struggle with? In this instance, people might lose the link. Who knows? We don't know yet. And so we've given it a bit of a test. And the important thing is we only spent half a day on this. We've not spent a lot of time on it. So if it fails, it's okay. So that's it. That's all I have to say for now on service design. There's a lot to do. There's a lot of tools and techniques you can pick up and use. Not all of them will work in every scenario. Behavior change certainly doesn't work with everything. Sometimes I look at systems change and all sorts of things and bring them into the work that I do. We talk about human-centered design. I actually just did a project that was dog-centered design. I can talk more about that some other time, not really relevant to this audience, but human-centered design didn't work as well as it could have done in that scenario. So, there's a lot of tools and techniques out there. You kind of got to pick and choose what works from you. I think, the process, sometimes you can trust a process to just drop out the right answer. In some ways, the service design process is a little bit more nebula, but, the more toolkits, the better. So I applaud this project because they can help you work through a problem. I am done. I will stop talking, but thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much. That was really great. Thank you both Bex and Imre. That was really excellent. Any questions? If you'd like to either just unmute your mic and ask the question, or feel free to put one in chat and we'll just have a quick Q&A. Anyone got a question? Otherwise I've got one to ask. Just trying to look through. Okay, I can't see anyone with a hand up at the moment. So, oh yeah, Marco. Oh, Marco, over to you.
Hi, Bex. I'm interested in what you say to people when they keep saying to you, I want an app.
We run, when I run projects, I run them very collaboratively with the client. So the client's often in the room in big workshop situations, and we even run week-long projects where we're all in a room together trying to solve some of these bigger problems. And I actually have a whiteboard, and if anybody solutionizes at all, and most of the time it's the app, I put a mark next to their name, and they have to buy the drinks at the end of the week or the end of the workshop. So that's what I say to people who constantly want an app. It can work in some instances. Start with the human needs, start with the requirements, and then if you don't know enough about technology, find a tech person. There's loads that will give you free advice, and they'll probably say, okay, based on these requirements, that can be a web app, that can be a chatbot, that could be whatever it needs to be. But I think people jump to app because it's just something we've all heard about, and it sounds cool.
Thank you. Is anyone else? We've got a couple of questions coming through in the chat as well. So I've got here one from Tom, which is, sometimes it's difficult to redesign an entire journey within a service, particularly in a charity setting. What's your take on delivering service design approaches sensitively or incrementally to an existing service? I think that's a question for you, Bex.
It's a big question, isn't it? I suppose, you know, I take a service design approach to blockers as well. So, you know, if you've got a director or someone or a department that's blocking change, why, you know, in a nice way, try and find out what the blockers are there and see if there's anything you can do to soften what you're about to do. Might not be that you can make change, you know, I mean, a lot of people, IT department comes to mind when we talk about this. And I think it's really good to understand why they're trying to make these changes. Often it's safeguarding, which is amazing. We should all be applauding that, but it does, you know, stop us when we're trying to create creative online experiences for people. So there is, you know, a tension there, but I think understanding their point of view can be really, really helpful. And then, you know, building up this bank of evidence to show them, say, this is why we need to use Miro or Minecraft with our users. Please let us access that piece of software. You know, it's showing them that evidence can really help with that. But also the incremental thing is, you know, exactly how we work in service design. So if you can get sign off on kind of just test this little thing, test a little thing, you know, show that it's not, it's all about risk mitigation, isn't it? So show that it's not risky by trying a little thing and seeing if it works and proving to people that, you know, that's how we have to work with funders, isn't it? Right? We try a little thing and show them that it works, and then they'll give us a load of money. So that's, I don't know if that answered really, but big question.
Thank you, Bex. And I've got a query from Dan, which I think I can help with as well. So it was around saying, service design for organizations with small teams work in this way for the most part. So that's great to hear, Dan. And I want to sort of back that up a bit as well, in terms of one of the reasons we thought this toolkit would work so well in youth work is because our work is all around young people, and we do have conversations all the time, don't we, about young people's needs and putting young people first, etc. So I think this approach really fits our sector really, really well. But your question there, Dan, is around sort of funding. So, you know, we might work in this way as a small organization, but how can we include this planning and cycle into a funding bid? I think that's a really difficult one to answer, because I think a lot of us know that in a lot of funding bids, they ask you already for the service. And actually that creates its own problems, because then we're sort of making something up based on assumptions. And it's not like the assumptions aren't real, you know, these are based on real experience. Everybody putting these bids together is very experienced, but actually if we don't design, if we don't actually have these processes within the first part of that project, we are so much more likely to get problems sort of later on. So in terms of the funding question, I think we need to put more sort of pressure on funders. I think we need to, you know, get people to understand that this is how you design and develop services, particularly digital services. And I know that some of the funders, particularly like the lottery, are starting to understand that. And that is because of a lot of this work around saying, you know, we can't just be commissioning a service without also commissioning the design of those services as well. So it's quite a big question there. Imre, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, thank you, Ariel. I just wanted to go on the same line about the funding, and of course, as we all know, like currently or in the near future, the Erasmus Plus funds would not be an option in the case of Wales. But just taking some experience from there, it is like there are frameworks, and it is such. And probably you could find some frameworks that allow the same, or as Ariel says, you can lobby a bit to change the procedure. It is possible in some, like in the Erasmus Plus cases, for example, to prepare a new service a lot. And we often say it sometimes as a criticism as well, a little bit, that it is quite easy to get funding for a pilot, but it's not easy to get funding for maintaining a service. But as regarding like in this case and answering this question, yeah, so like the pilot and the development, it can be made. It can be included in the bid, and if it is, and if you have access to bids where it is not the case, I do support Ariel that yeah, it's definitely worth lobbying on changing the framework a bit to meet the needs of the beneficiaries.
That's great, thank you, Imre. And we have got, I think, another hand up there, Gareth, and we'll have that as our final question, I think, because we are going to go into breakout rooms. So over to you, Gareth.
Ariel, thank you. It wasn't so much a question as an observation, really, because a lot of the questions have been about the funding and how we can manage a larger project. For me, I always come back to the question many, many years ago, how do you eat an elephant? And it's very hard in one sitting. Yeah. And it's break it down. So over the periods of time, I think any project, you just reiterate, try, you know, it really is, don't try and do the whole thing in one go. Break it down. That's it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good point. So thank you for that, Gareth. And we are going to go into some breakout rooms now, and it's just really for a chance for us to have a chat with each other. And one of the questions you might want to consider is, you know, how you might find service design beneficial in your work. So, you know, how could you use service design in your work, or how would it be relevant to you? And another question, if you find it interesting, and my colleague will put these in chat as well, is just around how we can disseminate this practice better in Wales. So we have these resources now, we have this toolkit. So actually, how can we work together to disseminate this? I also understand that some of you might not be from Wales, so you can also just think more widely. But my colleague is going to put down the questions in the chat. But don't worry too much about completely focusing on these questions. Once you get into the breakout rooms, just use it as an opportunity to share and speak about anything interesting that you've heard today, or anything that you want to share. And then we will come back in about sort of 12 to 13 minutes time. Hi, so we've got people coming back. We did notice as well, apologies to you, we sent like people in groups of 3s and 4s, and then some people ended up, because people didn't join and some people have left, some people ended up on their own, some people in just 2s, but hopefully if you were in a smaller group, you still found that valuable to be able to meet somebody. We're still like experimenting with how to create that still bit of an event where you can actually chat with people. But let's we're all back here, so I don't know if anybody has anything they want to sort of share, like any sort of final reflections, any thoughts around sort of how we can, you know, work as a group to actually bring this into Wales and bring this into youth work, or just any sort of final interesting points that you want to make. I will open it up.
I think for me, whatever methodology you use, and I don't think there's a right or wrong, particularly about any of them. It's what is right for you at that particular point in time. Go for it. And it's the go for it piece, and use it, utilize it, and use the agile piece in it. Go back. Did we do it right? Yeah, let's check again. And that's the way you will really move very fast and get where your people, your service needs to be quickest. What my experience tells me.
That's so great. And I think it's great that you're bringing in also things like agile and these approaches. You know, we can get sort of bogged down, can't we, with all these different approaches, but actually you're right. It's about using what's appropriate, but also making sure we keep learning. Like we need to keep evolving, because these approaches are real, they work, and we need to try and bring them into our sector somehow, because we deliver services that are absolutely integral and fundamental to support young people's well-being.
So sometimes I'll say, rather than stick to a solid method, pick up the best practice, and it's use that best industrial practice. Just, okay, so we're in social work, so we're in whatever. That's irrelevant. Let's use the industry best practice.
Absolutely, I'm with you on that. Christina, you got your hand up.
For me, a lot of it has been about like bravery. So because I am working with young people on the ground, I have to do really naughty things, like tell my superiors, whoever they may be, that what they're doing is not good enough. And you have to learn how to do that in a way that is engaging. But yeah, it's essentially about reminding people who we're working for. Like I consider myself, I work for the young people that I hang out with. I don't work for anybody else. It's about them. So we need to be brave and remind the people above us that that's what's happening.
That's really powerful, and I think that's a really great way to end, unless anybody else has.
I would say, Christina, as a trustee, yes, definitely do it.
That's great. Has anybody else got anything burning that they really want to say? I'm trying to flick through to see any hands up. If not, I will close it and just say thanks so much for all of you that have come, and thank you, massive thank you to Imre and Bax. It's just great that you've been able to come and share the project and also share your experience with the specs about service design. It's been really interesting. We do hold these on a sort of semi-regular basis. Probably the next one will be in about 3 months' time. If you have a topic that you think we need to discuss, please get in touch, because we're always up for collaborating on these. It's a space for us to be able to share this sort of practice around digital. My colleague will share some links in the chat. We've got quite a few previous Creating Conversations that we've recorded, so you can have a look at those on YouTube. They're on all different topics, usually around youth focused, but they're not all youth focused. And we've also got a resources hub as well. So we've got a place where we store lots of good links, information, so that you can access support and tools to deliver your work. And I think one thing that's really important to share right at the end is where actually can you get hold of this toolkit and also access the e-learning course. So if you keep an eye on promo website, sign up to our mailing list, and what we will do with this group as well, because you've all attended, we'll make sure we send you out a link when it's actually live on our website, so you'll just be able to download the toolkit from there. So that's available now. And in terms of an e-learning course, we need to consider when and how we can run one of these in Wales, because we also have to consider at the moment it's in English. So we need to also consider how, you know, now we've got this brilliant resource, how do we sort of translate that into Welsh as well, so that we can run a course for you in Wales. But yeah, basically keep in touch and we will keep sharing this information with you, and hopefully see you at the next Creating Conversations as well. So diolch yn fawr, and enjoy the rest of your day, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. All the links are in the chat for everything there Ariel mentioned, but thank you.
Thanks, Dean.